In the last few hours, a sudden wave of drones lit up the night sky across the Middle East, triggering alarms, scrambling air defenses, and pushing several countries into a state of high alert. Military officials say this may be one of the most coordinated drone operations seen in the region in recent months. But the biggest question right now is simple. Was this just a warning or the beginning of a much larger escalation? Reports first began circulating late at night when radar systems across several regional defense networks started detecting dozens of small aerial objects moving rapidly across multiple directions. Within minutes, defense systems were activated and interceptor missiles were launched to counter what appeared to be a large drone swarm moving toward strategic targets. According to regional security sources, the drones were launched in waves, a tactic designed to overwhelm missile defense systems. Instead of sending a single large attack, the drones arrived in clusters, forcing radar systems to track multiple targets simultaneously. This strategy is often used to stretch defensive capabilities and create confusion among operators trying to determine which drones carry explosives and which are simply decoys. As explosions echoed in the distance and air defenses attempted interceptions, images began appearing online showing streaks of light across the sky suggesting active missile interceptions. Residents in several areas reported hearing loud blasts and seeing flashes as defensive systems engaged the incoming drones. Military analysts say that drone warfare has become one of the defining elements of modern conflicts in the region. Compared to traditional missiles, drones are cheaper, easier to deploy, and capable of flying at lower altitudes that make them harder for radar systems to detect early. This latest incident is raising serious concerns because drone swarms can potentially overwhelm even advanced defense systems if launched in large enough numbers. Instead of relying on a single high-value weapon, attackers can send dozens or even hundreds of drones simultaneously, increasing the probability that some will slip through defensive lines. Shortly after the first wave of interceptions, governments across the region began issuing emergency security updates, military bases increased readiness levels, and additional surveillance aircraft were reportedly deployed to monitor the situation from the air. In Washington, defense officials began closely tracking the developments as the situation unfolded. U.S. military assets positioned across the region were placed on heightened alert, while intelligence teams worked to determine the origin and intent of the attack. The United States maintains several strategic bases across the Middle East, and any escalation involving drone strikes automatically triggers security assessments to ensure that personnel and infrastructure remain protected. Meanwhile, political leaders across the region have been holding urgent consultations to evaluate the broader implications of the attack. The possibility that this drone operation could signal a wider regional escalation is now being actively discussed among security experts. One factor that makes drone attacks particularly difficult to respond to is the uncertainty surrounding attribution. Unlike ballistic missiles that are easier to track back to launch sites, drones can be launched from remote areas, mobile platforms, or even disguised locations, making it harder to determine responsibility immediately. Still, intelligence analysts are examining flight patterns, radar signatures, and recovered debris to identify where the drones may have originated. Another major concern is the potential for miscalculation. When multiple defense systems activate simultaneously across different countries, the risk of accidental escalation increases dramatically. A single misinterpreted radar signal or defensive strike could trigger retaliatory responses, pulling more actors into an already fragile regional security environment. And that is exactly why tonight's events are drawing such intense attention from military observers around the world. Because if this drone operation was meant as a message, the message was loud and clear. Modern conflicts are no longer fought only with tanks and fighter jets. They are increasingly fought with swarms of unmanned machines capable of appearing suddenly, striking quickly, and disappearing before traditional forces can respond. But the biggest question still remains unanswered. Who launched the drones? What targets were they meant to hit? And could this be the first stage of something much bigger? To understand why this attack may be far more significant than it initially appears, we need to take a closer look at the technology behind these drone swarms and the strategic calculations that could be driving this escalation. To understand why this drone attack is causing so much concern among military planners, we need to look at how drone warfare has evolved over the last decade. What once started as a limited surveillance tool has now transformed into one of the most disruptive weapons in modern conflict. Unlike traditional airstrikes carried out by fighter jets, drone swarms rely on numbers, coordination, and unpredictability. A single drone may not carry a large payload, but when dozens or even hundreds are launched together, they create a complex battlefield problem that even advanced defense systems struggle to manage. Each drone can fly at low altitude, change direction quickly, and approach targets from different angles. When these drones arrive simultaneously, radar systems must track every incoming object while defense operators decide which targets pose the greatest threat. In those critical seconds, a single drone slipping through defenses can cause significant damage. Another factor making these attacks more effective is the use of mixed drone formations. Some drones are equipped with explosives designed to strike infrastructure or military facilities. Others may simply act as decoys, forcing defense systems to waste interceptor missiles on targets that are not carrying explosives at all. This tactic places enormous pressure on defensive systems because interceptor missiles are expensive and limited in supply. If defenders launch interceptors at every radar signal, they risk quickly exhausting their defenses. Military analysts believe this cost imbalance is one of the key reasons drone warfare has expanded so rapidly. A drone that costs tens of thousands of dollars can force a defense system to fire interceptors that may cost hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars each. That imbalance means a determined attacker can sustain pressure over time, gradually weakening defensive capabilities. Another reason these attacks are difficult to counter is the flexibility of launch platforms. Drones can be launched from trucks, hidden launch rails, or remote areas that are difficult to detect in advance. Some can even be pre-programmed to fly long distances autonomously, allowing them to reach targets far beyond their launch points. Because of this, intelligence agencies often struggle to determine exactly where a drone attack began until long after it has already taken place. In the aftermath of the latest drone swarm, defense officials across the region are now carefully reviewing radar data, satellite imagery, and recovered drone fragments to determine the technology used and the potential origin of the launch. This type of analysis can reveal critical clues about the engines, navigation systems, and communication signals used by the drones. Those technical signatures often help investigators trace the drones back to specific manufacturers or military programs. But beyond the technical investigation, there is also a much larger geopolitical question looming over the situation. If this drone attack was intended as a strategic message, what exactly was that message meant to signal? Some security experts believe the operation could be a demonstration of capability. By showing that a coordinated drone swarm can penetrate multiple layers of defense, the attackers may be attempting to prove that they possess the ability to strike deeper targets if tensions continue to rise. Others argue the attack may have been designed to test regional defenses, gathering valuable information about radar coverage, interceptor response times, and communication coordination between allied forces. If that is the case, the data collected during this operation could be used to plan future attacks that are even more difficult to intercept. There is also the possibility that this drone wave was meant to trigger political pressure. Large-scale drone operations attract global attention, forcing governments to respond publicly and potentially pushing diplomatic tensions even higher. That is why military leaders are now watching the situation extremely closely, because while the immediate drone threat may have been intercepted or neutralized, the strategic implications of the attack may only be beginning to unfold. The coming hours and days will likely reveal more details about how the operation was carried out and whether additional attacks could follow. For now, defense forces remain on alert, surveillance systems continue scanning the skies, and governments across the region are preparing for the possibility that this drone swarm was not an isolated event. Instead, it may represent a new phase in a rapidly evolving conflict where unmanned technology is becoming one of the most powerful tools on the modern battlefield. And if that is the case, the next moves made by regional powers could determine whether this incident fades into the background or becomes the spark that pushes the crisis into an even more dangerous stage.